Sounds like we're ready to start our meeting. Okay, we welcome everyone. This is our Cottonwood Heights City Council work session on May 5th, 2026, and we welcome everyone who is here joining us today and online. And we will begin with we want to excuse Councilmember Burrell, who's not feeling well today, and Councilmember Holton will be joining us shortly. And we'll start with a review of the business meeting agenda. After our welcome and pledge of allegiance, we'll have time for citizen comments. And then our action and disclosure items. We'll have resolution 2026-27, authorizing and certifying certain retirement contributions and benefits. Our city provides retirement contributions to qualifying officers and employees within URS, and this will be a discussion about that, which we will also cover in this meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Should we want to do it now?
No.
There's a staff report, isn't there?
Okay.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have 4.2, consideration of resolution 2026-28. Acknowledging the filing of the tentative budget for fiscal year 2026-27, which has been prepared by our city's budget officer. And this is establishing the date, time, and place for a public hearing on the tentative budget prior to the adoption of the final budget for the fiscal year. Then we have 4.3, intended statement by the city's budget officer that the tentative budget for fiscal year 2026-27 includes a proposed property tax increase. Then we have 4.4, statement of budget officer that the tentative budget includes a proposed property tax increase. Then we have 4.5, the budget officer will present and make available to the public a property tax impact schedule as a separate document from the other budget documents.
Just to clarify, 4.3 through 4.5 will not be a vote. They're just informational.
And this is to dot every I and cross every
Yes.
T for compliance with truth and taxation.
Yeah.
That's correct. And then we have 4.6. Consideration of resolution 2026-29, acknowledging that a separate item is on the agenda for the public meeting on 5 May 2026, notifying the public that the budget officer for the city of Cottonwood Heights intends to state to the city's council that the tentative budget includes a property tax increase. So these are all steps that are mandated by our legislature. Then we have 4.7, the city intends to make a statement that the city is considering levying a tax rate that exceeds its certified tax rate. The approximate dollar amount and purpose for additional ad valorem tax revenue that would be generated by the proposed tax rate increase, and all those other details which we will be covering. Then we have 4.8, statement of the budget officer or city manager. And this statement is about the tentative budget as well. And 4.9, consideration of resolution 2026-30, acknowledging that a separate item is included on the agenda for the 5 May 2026 public meeting, notifying the public again that we are having a change to our budget relating to property tax increase and about place that setting the date, time, and place of the public hearing for that increase as directed in code. Okay. And then we'll have our consent agenda. Okay, then if we come back to our meeting, anything from that?
Yeah, just real quick on the consent agenda. We're not quite finished with the changes that were made to the minutes. Or would you prefer to postpone those until the next meeting, or would you prefer
Yes.
to? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So as both of them or just the 21st?
Both.
Okay. Both.
There were sufficient changes, I think that's.
Okay, so we'll bring it
Go
back
and
again.
review everything.
Okay.
Okay, now we're ready for our staff reports, and each week we hear from our staff on reports, and the first item today is our tentative budget discussion, which will turn the time over to Finance Director Scott Jervis.
There's a lot here, so if we are skipping something or you don't hear something in there, please jump in, ask questions, because to go through it all would be hours worth of discussion, so I asked Scott to do kind of a broad overview, and then we'll dive into some of the changes and the key aspects of it. But if there's something you're curious about, please ask.
Hold on. Every once in a while it does this when I switch over. Disappears. There you go. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so all these have been included in the council packet that was sent out last week. And this outlines the full tentative budget as it sits today. It does include, as stated before, a property tax increase of $3.5 million, $3,500,000. And there are two other items. One is the truth and taxation statement, and then the proposed property tax impact schedule, which outlines where the different elements of the 3.5 million would be utilized throughout the budget. And those are separate documents that I'll go over in the business meeting, but not so much in this meeting, because we don't have to go through it technically in this meeting, and it's kind of incorporated into this. So this is just to outline the tentative budget. One note is that for the past several months, as we've been going through a variety of different things with a combination of our citizen budget committee, with discussions with individual council members and council as a whole and everything else, we have implemented several cost cutting measures already that are outlined in this document. And we've had to stop the hiring freeze to try and bolster the beginning fund balance and curtail spending for the current year. So just be aware some of those things are already in place and going, and I'll try and hit on that as I'm going through this. So starting in the 2024 to 2025 budget year, as well as the current budget year that we're in, which is the 2025-2026 budget year, we have utilized just under $1.7 million of fund balance in 24-25, and then we're projected to be just under $2 million of fund balance for the current year. That's a projection because we still have several months left in our year. However, we can't continue to sustain that. We're using too much money out of our budget to be able, or out of our fund balance to be able to sustain that and go on. That's kind of the nexus that put us in this position where we needed to make a budget change. And as we went through the process, it's a combination of cuts and increases that we decided to do, increases in property tax, that is. So as we start, we typically go back to the original adopted budget from the prior year as our base, and say, this is the base, and what are we going to do from that point going forward? Whether it's things that we're going to take away from that or things that we're going to add to that. And that base had a almost $2.7 million use of fund balance. So expenses and transfers out exceeding revenues and any other type of funding that gets transferred in. And that was our starting point. Then moving forward, we partially were able to offset this with increased revenues. So we have increased revenues of $1,028,000, And I'll go over a little bit of the details of that in a moment. But of that $1,028,000, $410,000 of that revenue is restricted to be used only for capital projects, particularly roads and trails is the only areas where those funds could be used. So we didn't have total freedom to be able to use all million of this new revenue dollars wherever we wanted to. And that's made up in these areas. So base property tax growth, this is a projection at this time because we will get our final certified property tax rates that will include new growth and also the impacts of the annexations and things that we've had with our city soon. But I projected 50,000 of new growth revenue, 100,000 of annexation growth revenue.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
That's from Tabachi and from the annexations to the south of Creek Road.
Yes,
Implicitly.
yes.
And just for the benefit of those who are listening, who may not know what a fund balance is, these are our reserves or our rainy day fund.
Yes.
So that's why it's not sustainable to
Yes.
continue. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll go through fund balance a little bit more detail in a moment that'll help to outline why that's not sustainable here too. So the general obligation portion of our property tax, we actually had a $3,000 reduction because our debt service payment reduces by that's associated with the general obligation bond. And so that there's actually a reduction there. The general sales tax projected increase is 250,000, and I'll go through a little bit more details of these in a little bit. And then these two that are highlighted yellow, county option highway sales tax, we're projecting about a $10,000 increase there. And then the county local transit sales tax, this is a new tax that wasn't budgeted at the beginning of this year, and we did an adjustment. That's budgeted to be 400,000. So that 10,000 and that 400,000 can only be utilized for capital projects. So we transfer that from the general fund into our capital projects fund to allow for that to go. Moving down through cable TV franchise taxes, we're projecting a decrease of $70,000 there. Energy taxes, that's on power and natural gas. We're projecting a $50,000 increase in that. The telecom fee is a new tax that has been implemented this year. It's a franchise type tax on the telephone lines within the city, whether it's a landline or a cell line. We figure that'll generate about $150,000 of new revenue. We looked at the licenses and permits for a couple of years and tried to figure out the trend of what is going on there. And we figure we can add about 107,000 of new revenue from licenses and permits to match closer to what we have been collecting in that. The Class C roads funds, which is the dollars that we get from the cents per gallon on either gas or diesel fuel coming in, we figure we can get another 25 or so thousand on that one. So we recommended that going up by that. And then the school resource officer contract that we have with Canyon School District adds in 5,000 per school resource officer that we have. We have 2 school resource officers right now. One is dedicated to the high school and the other's shared between the other schools. And so that'll generate another $10,000 there. And then our interest income, we're projecting a decrease both because fund balances are declining and because we're at least hoping that we might have some relief in terms of the interest. We're not projecting a lot, but maybe a little bit of a decline in interest rates over the course of the fiscal year that we'll be in. So that equals that $1,028,000. And like I said, 410,000 has to go away. So when we started with $2.7 million of deficit, now we're down up to or a deficit. We're now down to $2,076,000 of deficit by the time you add in the $1 million of new revenue and take out the 410,000 that needs to go out. Then we have a transfer in from the CDRA fund for the land lease revenue that's associated with the Hillside Plaza. And this is an early land lease revenue that's actually associated with the Walgreens property. And then we also had a reduction of expenditures by 397,000 and also a reduction in transfers by $202,000 to almost $203,000. And that's outlined, well, actually, it's not outlined. Well, I guess it is. The 397,000 is right here. So that shows the areas that we reduced. So we 2 FTEs in the culture division. We made some changes to, we're not gonna do a float for parades. We're not gonna have the overtime and stuff that goes along with the floats. And then we reduced cable TV out of our buildings here. So that's not available. We just catch it off of the internet if we need to catch things that we need to do related to news and other things. And then we reduced council training and travel. And then also we had elections that we did not need to have recur for the current year because we are every other year on elections. That's the 397. Then the transfers changes is we're eliminating the $200,000 transfer that we've done annually to the stormwater fund. And also this is the 2.9 or 2,949. That's all of the debt service changes, including the GO bond and other outstanding bonds that we had for the year. So that's that net $202,000 reduction in transfers. And then the new revenue coming in of $240,000. So by the time we go through all of those changes, it moves the deficit to 1 million, or the deficit to 1,235,000, almost $236,000. And then we go to things that we need to add back in. And so these are items that we figured we kind of had to do. We didn't really have a choice whether or not we could do it. The first item is changes in cost to vehicle, property, and liability insurance. We're adding 50,000 in for that. The fire annual increase of 4.28%, that's $209,000. All these IT things, ESRI is the mapping software that we utilize for planning and development services. We have several item modules in Cassell that we're adding and making more robust so that we can do more online sales of licenses and other things along those lines. There's a zero trust security compliance software, and this is an FBI, CJIS, and BCI requirement. There's replacement of an on-premise, I can't remember what an AD is right now. Active Directory. And everything. And again, this has to do with FBI, CJIS, and BCI requirements of $40,000. There's general software increase of about $15,000. And then software maintenance cost increases for all systems are between 6 and 12%. That's $25,000. And then there's a Cassell module to help us track our capital assets. We've been using an Excel spreadsheet, and it was just getting extremely cumbersome. And our auditors had been talking to us several years about getting a real capital assets program. And so we incorporated that, and that's about $5,000 to be able to do that.
Cassell is our accounting software.
It is.
And the purpose of the modules is to streamline processes so that we don't have to have staff taking so much time
Yes.
to.
Yeah. And to eliminate potential errors and things like that we've been experiencing a time or two. Then records management and dispatch, these next two have to do with Valley Emergency Communications. We're looking at about a net $10,000 increase between records management and dispatch costs. And then the next item is to the upgrade in cost, and this is an annual upgrade of this $160,000. So it's a 4-year contract, so we won't have to add 160 next year. It'll already be in the base budget to handle body cameras and the video storage for all that, so that they can be in compliance with everything that needs to go with that. So that's $573,000. So we add back that $573,000, and that moves our net deficit to $1,809,000. And then there are items that didn't necessarily have our feet to the fire, absolutely had to do, but things that we thought made sense to do because of just either market conditions or other things that we felt that we needed to do. And I'll just kind of list through those right now. And this will add up to $1,470,000. So health and dental and retirement cost changes of $50,000 net between all of those. The annual this is a 1% COLA that's included in here for the whole city. That's just under $120,000. The merit increase, which would be 2.75% for civilian, and for sworn, it would be a step. And so that's a little bit higher than that for sworn. And that net cost of that is $302,000. And then market adjustments per the salary study, we were able to calculate that at just under $36,000. And then in addition, we transfer some of our personnel costs to the stormwater fund that are associated with stormwater maintenance type stuff that we do, street sweeping and other things like that. So of the increases that we've gone over above here, 28,000 of that we were able to transfer over as a cost into the stormwater fund. And that's on a formula that we do in terms of what percentage of each individual employee in public works, you know, and their impact on the stormwater fund. So that's actually a reduction to the general fund on that. And then annual attorney COLA increase, and this helps to pay both for our city attorney as well as for contracted attorneys that we sometimes have to have for various specialties. The police department has asked for VPN licenses for phone and iPads, and this helps them to do their work so that they can't always trace where they're doing their investigations basically from, so that they can't always tell that they're, you know, right next door to wherever they're doing their investigations. The next two items is as a combination of an annual amount as well as a one-time amount. And this is DR site, which is a disaster recovery site for all critical IT infrastructure systems. And this is a requirement by the FBI for both CJIS and BCI compliance. And it basically says we have to be able to get the city back up and running within 24 hours, and not just police stuff, but also to be able to pay our police officers and other city people. So it's a multiple systems within to be able to get the city up and running within 24 hours if there was a disaster, say an earthquake or a fire or something along those lines, that we'd be able to do that. And that's a requirement from BCI. Like I said, there's an annual component to it as well as a one-time. So the one-times would drop off after this year and not be required in a future year.
Why is that a should if it's a required?
You could potentially delay it for a year, but we felt that it was more important to do it this year rather than to delay it a year, because it's going to have to be done either this year or next year. We don't have the choice on that. It will have to be done in one of those 2 years. And we thought that it was going to be more important to put it in and do it as part of this year's. Or else we'd have to be looking at a way to be able to cover those costs in a future year.
For next year, and it'd be a rush job then to make sure we get it done in time.
Okay, so the one time between that and the refreshing the AV systems, that's 395,000 that would not be next year. It's a one time this year, 140 plus 255.
Yep. And so the next two items are refresh the AV systems in the council chambers, the workroom here, and in the community room. We're having issues with outages and things and lack of replacement parts, where we could potentially go offline and not be able to get online and have to bring in portable cameras to try and do the meetings and things. And we just figured that that's something that we need to do and get done. We've known about it for a couple of years. We've been band-aiding it and just figured it's time that we need to do that. Unfortunately, these things don't get cheaper over time. They just get more expensive. Training costs. This is training costs, clothing and meals in police. Right now, we're struggling to maintain the training that we are required to have in order to be able to do things. And then in HR, there's some similar clothing and meals, as well as a health and employee wellness program for that for 10,000. In police, there's 40,000 for increased training standards, as well as a recommended vehicle camera system for the police. Right now, they don't have vehicle cameras, and that would be a very nice thing to be able to incorporate into when they're doing a traffic stop or coming into a situation so that they could have the video recording, you know, for those instances, because a lot of the things that they do, that's where how it starts before they get out of the car, and you can see on their body cam what's going on with things like that.
We never had those cameras?
Not officially.
We've implemented some cheaper versions of it on occasion, but otherwise you see it off the body cam, but it doesn't show you in pursuits or pulling up to a scene, and we've lost valuable information on critical incidents, and
Yeah, that seems like it should just be a standard
Yes,
we agree.
without question.
yes,
Yeah.
It's exposing us to a huge liability.
Yeah,
yes.
I'd be up for moving that from a to
Yeah,
Well, these are all in our budget.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, but you're right, they
Yeah.
are critical.
So that's 62,000 to add that to the vehicles. And both, this is kind of a combination between, community and economic development as well as public works, but additions that would include the ability to, do texting, surveys, notifications, and permit management. There's an annual component of 28,000 and a one-time amount of 5,700 to be able to add that in. And it would really help with different things that they do there, as well as to the surveys and texting is something that would help beyond those two departments. In public works, and this is just kind of because it flows through there, for the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation Service area, they do our parks and equipment maintenance, and the costs of that is going up a lot, as well as there's a new park coming online for the year. And the net increase in that is $165,000 for them to keep doing that work. And that this is one that we've talked about before. We toyed with bringing it in-house. And in terms of the ongoing cost, we can handle it in-house for the same amount of money, including this $165,000 increase. What we can't handle doing that is the one-time purchase of the equipment that we would need to utilize, and it's just under 200,000 for that equipment that we would need to be able to do that. So we did not recommend bringing it in-house yet, but that's something that could come up in a future year as we look at that and see what's going on. Building maintenance costs, we're seeing increased building maintenance costs predominantly at this building, but also potential to have some of that at the Public Works building as well. So we would like to put in 50,000 for that type of stuff. And then the Salt Lake City fire hydrant maintenance, we're anticipating increases each year on that. So this 25,000 would help with that. So by the time you add this 1,470,000 back in, it takes our overall deficit to $3,279,000. And that is pretty close to the $3.5 million that we had talked about at a few times probably in the past. And so that's what really got us to the $3.5 million amount that is included in this. And that would leave us with about $220,000 of extra funds that would go back into our general fund balance. And we'll talk about fund balance momentarily here as it goes, but we'll still be below 15% of overall fund balance as compared to the revenues that come in. And ideally, you probably want to be a little higher than that, maybe even in the 20 to 25% range to be able to have more flexibility to function. But we would still be slightly below 15% in our overall fund balance. So looking at our fund balance, as we prepared, we wanted to kind of get an idea of where we were going to be with our fund balance coming into the budget season. And as we projected things and watched them, sometimes something will go up, but something else will go down. And it stayed somewhat in the ballpark of where we thought it would land for the year as we've looked at it over about a month and a half to 2 month period. And that is about roughly a $4 million budget or ending balance in our fund balance. And that would be a decrease of $1,913,000. So just under $2 million net decrease. Now, that could change from that. It might be a little bit better, say maybe we hit $4.2 million or somewhere in there. But it's probably not gonna be drastically different than that as we move forward. Excuse me. You look at that and that's $576,000 better than our current budget if we land at 1,913,000. And then if we land at 4 million, that 4 million would represent 14% of our current year's budgeted revenues for 2025-26. And we're required to hold a minimum of 5% from the state plus an additional 1% from the city for a total of 1,710,000. In addition, there's a reserve for compensated absences of about 764,000, and we don't calculate that till the end of June, so that'll change a little bit from there. And that would leave us about $1.5 million available for appropriation that we could potentially use. Although I wouldn't recommend going much lower than where we sit. We start to run into some cash flow issues as we go out through the year due to timing of when some of our revenues come into the city and other things like that. If we go much lower than where we currently sit.
In a budget like year like we're facing now, why would you recommend we go above 15%? Because my thought was 15% is safe.
I think 15% is the bottom of where you really want to be. And the reason for that is most of our property tax revenue doesn't come in until November, December, and January. So we're right in the middle of our year. And then on sales taxes, and then there's a variety of different sales taxes. There's about 4 different levels of sale taxes that we get. We're about, it's about 50 days, the delay from when the month closes to when we receive those funds. And so we're always kind of playing in arrears on that. We do, in essence, mingle all of our funds together, not just general fund monies. But if we were to run only general fund balance from a cash perspective, we would dip pretty low in the months from July through about the end of October. It would get pretty low and then it would start to come back up. Now we do, like I said, we pool all the funds together. And we don't have to close the books at the end of October, so it's not like a critical timing. But at the end of the year, we'll be back up into a decent place. But it does put us in the situation where potentially we would have to say in this next year, we're planning to do replace some of the police vehicles and the light duty public works vehicles, where we may have to mess with the timing of when that would occur. It's scheduled to happen in July, and we may have to delay that out into future years. Now, in that particular case, we are going to be getting some lending to be able to go and do that. But anything that we wouldn't be getting lending for that would be more significant in nature, we would have to start considering other options. One of the things I just kind of thought about is like on fire, we pay them quarterly, but we pay them up front in that first month of the quarter. And so that's a negative, impact on us in terms of a cash flow perspective, and different things like that. I think you get much lower than 15%. It's in how our city works and manages, it gets a little bit more difficult to try and be fluid, if you will.
And we're not trying to get to 25% this year. That's just,
No.
we're saying we would be much more comfortable if we had a goal of reaching that over the next few years.
Yeah.
But what I just heard you say is that's an accounting cash flow problem, not a real cash flow problem. You kind of on the margins, maybe,
Yeah.
is it a
Yeah.
spreadsheet cash flow problem or is it a real cash flow problem?
So when you add up all of our funds, and everything, as long as we have a reasonable amount of capital projects going on, capital projects always tend to float out over a couple of years because usually we get funded for them. We do an engineering study to see what we need to do. We then, pinpoint what we're gonna do. Say it's $1 million that we're gonna be doing, a road rebuild or something along those lines. And then we do, like I said, we do the engineering, we do some preliminary stuff. And then we don't end up spending that money oftentimes until the next budget year. So we can, in essence, we can kind of borrow from ourselves, use that money to be able to support different things that we need to do internally. It would impact the interest allocation to the general fund if we utilize that down, and that would, negatively impact, where that would go. The lower our fund balance gets, the less interest we would be receiving on that. But, you know, like I said, we have about $1.5 million of flexibility, and that's measured at June 30th each year. So I guess, could we go lower than that? Legally, yes, we can go lower than that. I would start to get pretty nervous about some things and start delaying some requests for expenditures until after probably December to January, just because if they're elective, I would feel more comfortable waiting on them and making sure that we had the money to pay, for instance, personnel and other things along those lines.
Okay, what, I still need to be clear, so.
Yeah.
We are saying that the 15% is okay. We'd like to be higher, we may not be able to do that this budget year. And when you're talking about $1.5 million of flexibility, you're talking about the difference between what would be a 15% fund balance and our required statutory 6% fund balance.
6% plus compensated absences.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's this little bit of room, but it would be inadvisable for us to use that for our budget.
Yeah. It makes me really nervous and
Sense.
makes me well, you know, if I'm having to write a check for that, I'm gonna say, don't buy that right now. We need to make sure we have money to pay our people. You know what I mean, as we go forward.
I do now know what you mean.
Yeah. So. So like I said, changes. So starting with our revenues and property taxes. So the property taxes in this are budgeted at $11,972,000, and this includes $150,000 of new growth in essence. That's a combination from, you know, new structures and things that might be built, as well as the new annexations that we brought into the city. And this could be a little low. We took a look at this the other day, and this maybe might be upwards of 200,000. We'll get that number in, right around June 10th, and then we'll know what that number will be, and we'll be able to true that up. So before we adopt the budget in June at our second meeting, I'll have that amount, and I'll get that out to everybody so they know what that is. We'll also get our actual property tax rates, because right now we're operating off of what is our rates from the calendar year 2025, which is tax year 2025. We don't have those rates and won't until about the 10th of June, as they go through their processes. Let's see.
So in June, they'll tell us the rate plus our expected,
New growth.
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll know our amount.
Yeah.
On that.
Yep. And so this includes also the 3.5 million of property tax increase that we're proposing. So coming down here, our property tax rate from the prior fiscal year 2025-26 is 0.001300. And that amount, if all things were to hold the same and that became our new tax rate, we would anticipate the tax rate to move to 0.001857. If nothing were to change, it will probably be less because as property values go up, the rate goes down. But we anticipate it would be less than that, but that it would generate $3.5 million of additional revenues. So on the average $819,000 home, and again, that number will change as well when we get the final number. The increase would be about $251,000 or $251 annually, or $20.92 a month. And for commercial property valued at $1 million, the impact would be about $557,000 or $557. Sorry, I'm not used to talking in hundreds of dollars for the budget. And $46 a month for your average commercial property. And that's what we anticipate that would be. That will be trued up as we go through the process and get the final numbers right around June 10th. We should have all that. So then there's the separate level of property tax that is associated with the general obligation bond debt service. Last year it was 1,314,000 or so. This year we only need 1,311,000. So that's a decrease of 3,787. And the tax rate associated with that last year was 0.000209. And that would probably decrease from that, but again, we'll know what that number is in June when we plug that all in to the State Tax Commission website where they have that, when they have all the rates in there. Excuse me. Sales taxes, so in going back doing a little history, in 23-24, we received $9,069,000, almost $9,070,000. And then in 24-25, we received $9,183,000. For the current year, we're budgeted for, and we expect to receive right around $9.5 million. When I did the quick math on it the other day, I think it would probably be maybe $9,550,000 by the end of the year. But that it fluctuates greatly month over month. So it's kind of hard to anticipate what that will be until you actually get the results in. But that's what I would figure. But looking at what is probably most likely, I would recommend going to $9,750,000, which would be around a $250,000 increase year over year on that. And I think that's a safe place to be where, you know, we're not going to be overreaching or underreaching too far on that. The county option highway sales tax. So this is a sales tax that we have to transfer all into our capital fund, has to be used for either road or trails projects. And we're going to budget that at $830,000, which is $10,000 more than we project for the 25-26 fiscal year. That's where $10,000 of that extra transfer into the capital projects fund comes from, is that item there. And then the county local transit sales tax. This one we did not budget originally in our current year budget, but we did do an adjustment. I think it was in September or October where we did that adjustment. And we're putting that in again for $400,000 anticipated on that. And then, you know, that again can only be used for capital improvements, specifically road projects, because it is a transit related tax for that. The energy use tax, and this is in essence, a fee that's added on, a percentage fee that's added on either your power or natural gas bill. And we're currently at $2,550,000, and that's $50,000 more than our current budget, but pretty close to our current expenditures. And that's where we kind of recommend it being. We're not anticipating. One thing that can impact this to keep in mind is if there's a rate change coming up that we're aware of, whether it's up or down, that will have a bearing on this. We're not anticipating big rate changes at this point in time. All the rate changes have already occurred in the past. And so we're kind of just mimicking what we're seeing going on. But as I talked about last council meeting, if you have a mild winter or a mild summer, that can actually negatively affect what you have. Or if you have a really cold winter or a really hot summer, that can actually positively affect this, because as people use more air conditioning or more heating, that's a positive impact on us from a revenue perspective, even though it might not be what we want, you know, in many other ways. But anyhow, just keep that in mind as we, you know, go forward. We could see changes in that because of that.
Is that a rate, the energy use tax, is that a rate that the municipality sets or the state sets?
The municipality sets it. We do have a limit on what we can charge on it, and I can't remember the rate off the top of my head. I think it's 6.5 or 6.25. Is it 6 even? Okay, 6% even.
You can go lower.
Yeah, you can go lower than that, but you can't go higher than that.
Do you know what ours is?
So it's set at the maximum rate. Yeah. And it's mainly, I would say it's not worth setting it a lower rate. If you're going to go through the pain of setting it, just set it at the max rate. You know, because it just makes sense, or from my perspective anyhow. The fee in lieu of property tax this is on the tax on vehicles. It's projected right now to be a little higher actually than $325,000 for the current year. I've just contained $325,000 moving forward. It's possible that we could get a little more than this, but it's not going to be real material in the grand scheme of all the revenues. But we'll keep an eye on that. And if we see that it continues to go down that road, then we may bring that back to you and recommend a change on that. Franchise or cable TV taxes built into the budget, we've got 230,000. And that's a little less than what we expect to collect in the current year. I think we're probably expecting around 270, maybe 265,000 for the current year. And each year we seem to see a little less in this particular revenue source for reasons that we've talked about in the past. Transient room tax is currently budgeted at 180,000, and that's the same as our current year budget, and that's really close to what we project the current year revenues to be at. This could be impacted. As you know, we're doing a current short-term rental review throughout the city. And there are many things that could potentially impact this, identifying additional short-term rentals that may not be contributing taxes, as well as possibly even opening up short-term rentals. And I know that's not on the agenda, but I'm just saying that's something that could impact this as we go through. But right now I'm anticipating that at 180,000. Telecom franchise tax, we implemented this earlier in 2026, I believe it was January, and this will start to generate revenues in July of 2026. And based on looking at the surrounding cities and what they're getting, I would guess we're going to get right near 150,000 off of this. We'll have to watch that because we don't have a really good way to predict that, to see what kind of phone lines numbers we have throughout the city. But that's kind of our early estimate. And on a phone bill, an average phone bill, we would guess that this would be about 70 cents a month or $8.40 a year on an average phone line. So all of these tax type changes are a total of 4,436,000. And with most of that being the property tax increase of 3,500,000, the rest of it, itemized out in there like you see. There's a handful of other changes in here, 25,000 in the Class C roads, a little bit of a decrease in our interest revenue projections as discussed before, 107,000 increase in our licenses and permits to be in line with prior year collections in those areas, and then 10,000 in school resource officers. So total revenues as it's contained in here would be $32,044,465. So again, that's an increase from the prior year so that total increase is about 16%, most of that being our property tax increase that's contained in this. And in addition to that, the transferring of revenues that are associated with the CDRA fund as a land lease revenue, because it's a transfer in, they don't count that as a revenue, that's in other sources of funds. So that's a separate line item. So that would come in on top of that, bringing our total revenues and other sources to $32,284,465 that would be included in just the general fund of our budget. Any questions to that point? Okay. So going through the expenditure changes, I'll kind of focus through in groups. We've left the employee cost changes as a whole. So for market, we were able to get that in at just under $36,000. And this is various changes to various employees based on a market study that we did, moving them to around a mid-market for civilians and to move the police up about number 3 on that pay group, comparison as that study that we had. Excuse me. The cost of living that we included in this was a 1%. And then just to note, the CPIU for the period of 2025 calendar year was 2.7%. And so it is below that. And the data that was pulled for the study was pulled from basically the past fiscal year. It was just after the last increases were put in place. So the reason why we need to do some COLA adjustments as well as merit adjustments is because other cities and in essence our competitors are going to be doing that as we move forward in that. The current merit oh, by the way, that the net cost of that one was just under $120,000. The current merit is recommended at 2.46% for civilian employees that are not at the top of the range, or one step in the salary structure for sworn employees, and that would be an average of 2.82%. Now, there is a 0.5% that is allocable to civilian employees. That's one-time adjustments with the approval of the city manager. And that does not have to be utilized, and is just in there as an if it needs to be utilized for things that are going through the year. When all employees are considered, the average of this is 2.6%. And that merit is to recognize growth, knowledge, longevity, et cetera, for people who are not yet at the top of their range. And that impact is $302,000 for the merit. Longevity is included at 1% for those who are at the top of their range. So if you were already at the top of your pay range, you would be eligible for a one-time 1% longevity bonus that does not go into your retirement or any of that. It's just a one-time bonus type payout. And then health and dental costs, where there was the actual increase of the dental was 6.7%. But when I factor in employees that have it and don't have it and what have you compared to last year, which there's a little bit of a mix of, you know, who had what level of insurance, it actually budgetarily calculates out to 6.4%. And then the dental insurance increases about 3.4%. And then we had a reduction of $40,000 on civilians in the URS system, where there was a 1% decrease in that. And so when we net all that out, it nets out to be about $50,000 between those two. So the total employee cost changes in this that are included in this document are $507,000. And then 28,000 of that gets transferred to the stormwater fund. Like I said, that leaves just under $480,000 as the general fund impact of employee cost changes that are included in here. Any questions before I move on? Okay. So there were some cuts that were implemented.
Sorry, some water, Scott.
Almost. We'll see if we can get through this here, then we'll get some water. There were cuts that were included of 510,000. These cuts include a reduction of 2 FTEs in the culture division. That saves us almost $225,000. We also reduced the Butlerville Days Parade and float, or we changed the Butlerville Days Parade and eliminated the float. And so we were able to save some overtime with that as well, netting to $39,000 of reductions there. Cable TV, we have reduced that, and that saves us about $6,500 from what we had been spending. Yeah.
Didn't we also decide not to do fireworks, so that wasn't reflected in the Butlerville Days
That's good.
changes? Isn't there another 16 or 15 or $16,000?
39,000 or?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think
So we
that's
might
not
have missed
included
that
in there.
one. That might have popped up after I was starting to assemble this, and so we'll
But you're
probably
right.
need to add that one in.
Good ones.
Yeah. Whatever that is.
I think it's 15 or 16,000 for
15,
each,
I
the
think.
drone and
15, I
the
think.
fireworks, and so we decided because of the drought year that we would just do drone this year.
Yeah. So that would be, yeah, I'll get a hold of that one and we can incorporate that. Council travel and training has been reduced by 40,000. So it's down to 10,000 net in council travel and training. And then we also eliminated the stormwater fund transfer for $200,000. So that's a savings to the general fund, but a cost, if you will, to the stormwater fund by not doing that adjustment. Then other recommended changes. So the elections, again, we have biannual city elections, so we can reduce that $86,000 for elections this year. It will come back in that vicinity for the next year, so we need to keep that in mind. The city attorney, again, $7,500 to handle some inflationary costs for that's tied to the COLA amount that's implemented. Colwyn Heights Recreation contributions. This is the money that we contribute to Cottonwood Heights Recreation District, that they do maintenance in the parks that we own on some of the playground equipment or tennis courts or, you know, fields or other things that we do. And we kind of, you know, work on that. And so it includes that same amount in there. It's not a change from year over year. On that, oftentimes we use that money as matching for track grants and other things.
Is that different than the 130,000 that executive director brought to us? Yes.
130 was the increase in the annual maintenance. The 60,000 is what we budget every year just to help match grant requests or do
Okay.
minor capital improvements on some of the parks. This is the only fund we have that we actually put towards parks besides the maintenance.
How many parks do we own,
4 now.
including Summerhill?
Yes.
Let's see. Mayor and council, there were no recommended changes outside of the reduction of 40,000 described above with travel and training. City manager, and this is just because we don't know where else to put this, 50,000 to help cover liability, insurance premium and deductible increases. Finance, there's a net of $6,700 mainly for training. IT, this is the big one. $732,000, so there's $320,000 for audiovisual needs, which we talked about before. Some of that is ongoing, some of it is one time. And then $112,000 for various software and server upgrades, and then $300,000 for equipment replacement and increased cost of the equipment that we've been seeing as we go through that. Records, culture and human resources, 11,700, some for uniform costs and meals costs, as well as 10,000 for an employee wellness program. City hall maintenance, $50,000. Community and economic development, 34,200, and this is again for that iWork software that I talked about earlier. And that will be actually shared with the Public Works Department to be able to help them do the things that they do. Police cost increase of 272,500. This again is the body camera increase of 160,000. The car camera increase of 62,500. The VEC Versaterm dispatch and records maintenance increase of about $10,000. And then training increases of $40,000. Ordinance enforcement, there were no changes recommended. Fire, there's the increase of 209,180, and that's a 4.28% increase year over year on fire. And then public works, the net change is 190,000, and this is again the parks maintenance of 165,000. That's about 100. I didn't bring that sheet with me, but it's about 130 or so thousand of the base parks that were included in the prior year budget, plus an amount for the new Summerhill Park that is coming online during the current year. And then the Salt Lake City water fire hydrant maintenance cost of 25,000. So when you take all that into account, the net expenses are recommended at $25,712,000. That's an increase of $1,645,000 when compared to the original adopted 25-26 budget. And so you've got your breakout between personnel costs, election costs, you know, and other things in here. You know, IT is one of the bigger ones outside of, you know, some of those things, but a lot of those are either required to do either this year or next, or required to do because we're worried about the audiovisual systems potentially going down in the city. And then in the transfers.
And before we go
Yeah,
there,
yes.
back to the city hall maintenance.
Yeah.
Has that been in our budget in prior years?
So we have had an amount in, and I can't remember the base amount for the current year. It's 70.
75 is
Yeah, something right there.
that pays for cleaning
Yeah.
as well as anything that we have go on here. And last year we had a $36,000 equipment charge. The year before was a $20,000 breaker that blew. So we've.
So we're just adding some to cover.
$15,000 water heater.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been really tight in that area, actually kind of going over the budget a little bit in that area and absorbing that with other areas where we haven't spent money to make that work in the past, and we're just feel like that needs to be able to be whole in and of itself. That's where that came from.
Thank you.
We have discovered that newer computers do not connect to our systems here.
Yeah,
And so we are on the last leg.
it is
We're
very
already
interesting.
probably past the last leg.
Yeah, sometimes new computers won't connect and really old computers won't connect. There's a sweet spot right in there that'll work. And so don't get too new or don't get too old and you'll be okay, you know, and kind of weird how that happens. You think that, oh, everything will work, and it doesn't always do that.
I wish that were a reality, but I just had to point out, that's where we're at.
It is. It is. It's,
Sadly, even what, 12 years that this has been, this building was built 12 years?
well, we got occupancy in 2016, so it's
10 years ago.
Wow.
it's about 10.
Okay,
Yeah. So when you look at it all, well, looking at the transfers out, so transfers out are 2,410,000. That's 410,000 more than last year, again, because of the reasons where I said it's the revenues that are dedicated for this purpose of going to the capital projects fund. And then the debt service amount that we need for this year for debt service is 3,941,000, and that's about $3,000 less than the prior year. And you can see the breakout between the general obligation bond, the land and buildings bonds, and then the police and vehicles bond, and then the public works vehicles bond. So overall, in this budget, if we were to do this, how it is in here, we would end up with $220,000 bill to fund balance. Our current ending fund balance would be $4,220,000. And that would be 13.1%. Now you think to yourself, how can it go from being 14% to 13.1? It's because our revenues increased. So now when you take, you know, the percentage of our revenues and our ending balance, it's a vicious circle to a degree that you get in. As you increase your revenues, in order to have the same, you know, percentage ending fund balance, you have to have more of an ending fund balance. And so we're actually going from a 14% fund balance to a 13.1% fund balance. We have to be between 5% and 35% according to state statute. And with our city ordinance, it means that we have to hold 6%, and that 6% would be $1.9 million. And then the reserve that would be about $764,000 for compensated absence. So again, we would be ending the year with about $1.5 million available for appropriation, fast forwarding about a year and 2 months from now. So we haven't really done a lot to make more money available at that point in time, as it goes through there, even though the fund balance will be slightly higher. So are there any questions as it relates to the general fund before I move on? So just a note, all of our other funds are dependent on the general fund. So the transfers out that are outlined up here, in essence, make all of those other funds work. So we don't really have self-sufficient other funds except for the CDRA fund. It brings in tax increment financing that helps it to function and do what it needs to do. But our debt service fund takes money that's transferred in from the general fund and pays for building bonds and, you know, vehicle leases and, you know, general obligation bonds and things like that. Our capital projects fund takes money transferred in from the general fund to be able to pay for capital projects that are going on. I guess the other fund that does actually support itself is the stormwater fund. We'll go over these other funds now. So in the capital improvements fund, we're projected to have about 313,000 beginning fund balance available for appropriation in there. A lot of that accumulates by way of the interest earned in that fund over the years. And so that is money that if we have a project that goes over, we can utilize this money to tackle any overages and things that we have throughout the year without having to go into our general fund and make transfers in to try and make that whole. And that's nice to be able to have so that we don't have to do that. We had to utilize a little bit of that this last year as we were doing some minor capital project stuff in there. The transfers in are, though, like I said, are 2,410,000. And that's made up of the county option sales tax funding plus 400,000 from the quarter funds. That's a straight transfer in that comes in to us, and 400,000 from the county local transit tax. And then an additional 780,000 that comes from general fund revenues, predominantly from the Class C roads funds. And that's about half of those Class C road funds. The other half helps to offset our employee costs in the general fund in public works. And then about 100,000 in interest revenues in the capital improvements fund. And then we take what ends up being 2,510,000 and budget that back out in the form of street funding of 2,370,000. So we've got city road striping. We've got other capital projects of 2,170,000. We've got sidewalk in here at 140,000. That is sidewalk 50/50, hazard mitigation, and ADA ramps. And so that's what we spend our money on. We will end up having to rebudget some projects that are not going to finish during the current budget year, and we'll bring that to you in September or so of the year, but it's not new money for that. That's just rebudgeting. So again, no change in the ending fund balance currently projected in there, and having that 313 available to pay for any overages that we could potentially occur. Stormwater fund. So this one, remember, we used to transfer in 200,000 from the general fund into this fund to be able to help cover some of the expenditures in here. However, in an effort to try and bolster the general fund, we eliminated that $200,000 transfer. And we do have a stormwater fee that is modeled out to be able to do what they call equivalent residential units. And so that is a monthly charge that goes out and is charged to each property owner based on their equivalent residential unit size. So most homes are one equivalent residential unit. If it's a larger home, it could be more than that. Businesses are a variety of different sizes depending on the business size and the impervious surface and so on and so forth. But our idea is to limit our spending so that we have 500,000 in this storm water fund at any given time, because we have experienced some unexpected losses of basically pipes breaking. And so we want to be able to have those funds available, because if we don't have those funds available, the only place to go to get those funds would be the general fund. And we don't want to have to go to the general fund and, in essence, pull money out of there to make this work. So the beginning fund balance is projected to be $500,000. The revenues are in here at 1,850,000, and that is all predominantly from the stormwater fee. So 1,830,000 comes from the stormwater fee. And now there is a handful of different things going into that this year. I made some notes on this so that I can do this right as I'm going through here. So the current year, we've been billing $8.44 per ERU to be able to do it. We had a 3% increase budgeted in our fee structure to be able to go up 25 cents per ERU. However, we also need to make up for the $200,000 that we're not transferring in from the general fund. So I put in $1.07 additional per ERU to make up for that $200,000. So if you take all that and add it together, it makes our new billing amount $9.76 per ERU. So that is a net increase from $8.44 to $9.76. And I believe, did I put it in here? I probably didn't. I think it's about a 16% net increase, if I remember correctly, to be able to do all that. Yeah, I think so. So, and so that's how I modeled this out based on the loss of that $200,000 from the general fund, so that we would be able to have that. In addition to that revenue, there's a $200,000 amount in there for interest revenue in this particular fund on that. Are there any questions as it relates to that part of it? Why I did what I did or anything? Okay. So operational and maintenance costs are 780,000, and that includes 644,000 in personnel costs, and that 644,000 is where that extra 28,000 in personnel change costs comes from the general fund that we talked about earlier. And then 500,000 for storm drain reconstruction, as well as 569,000, almost 570,000 for a variety of needs such as stormwater manholes, inlets, raising buried storm drain manholes, cameraing the system, and any random, capital projects that we might need to use for that throughout the year. And so we would then again end with our projected $500,000 ending fund balance for that. The CDRA fund has a projected ending balance of $526,000 for the budget year. And that would be the 6th year of the tax increment financing on the Canyon Center project up there. And I put parking, I didn't mean to say parking in there. So I'll have to edit that one out up there. But it's just the Canyon Center project up there. And then we do have some operations in the Hillside Plaza. Most of this $526,000 that is in there as fund balance is revenue that's come from the Hillside Shopping Center. We've had it now for about, it's a little more than 2 years, almost 3 years of time that we've had that. And we've made some money on that as we've gone through that in terms of the rent that we get coming in, as well as the expenditures going out. And that's kind of the net of where we're sitting right now, is that 526,000 is the delta on that. That money can be used in a variety of different ways, either for the Hillside project, or it could be utilized in other ways, but it's kind of associated with that area over there where that money came from. Most of the money that is associated with the old projects, whether it's Fort Union or Cottonwood Corporate, have been transferred out and utilized and in capital projects are in and around those areas. And we'll be doing a reconciliation of that over the next couple of weeks for a June 30th report that'll be coming out this year. But on this CDRA fund, we've got 50,000 in interest on fund balance. That's a revenue. 750,000 as taxes related to the Canyon Center project, and this would be the tax increment financing related to that. Just a note that 750,000 gets redistributed out to a variety of people, including some back to us to help offset our costs associated with the Canyon Center project, including the park up there. I have to look again because I can't remember. We either will have all the funds by the end of June this year for the park that we'll be getting, which is 770,000, or we'll get the final funds in the next budget year. And I can't remember off the top of my head right now where that is in the dynamic of that. And then there's 550 or so thousand operational revenue that comes in from the Hillside Plaza, about 240 land lease revenue that will be transferred back into the general fund. So the net of that is almost 700, almost 800 actually $1,000 of revenue that comes in on that. Transfers in, no transfers in are needed in the current year for anything that we're doing there. The external, in terms of expenses, 50,000 in miscellaneous professional fees that we have to incur related to CDRA projects. And then 750,000 in costs related to the Canyon Center TIF project. And then 550,000 in operational costs associated with the Canyon Center. And then 240,000 that will be transferred back to our general fund in terms of a land lease revenue to give us some funding in there. And then we would end the year with the same $526,000 that would be in there. And then we could, utilize that potentially for the Hillside Plaza if we have something that we need to do up there. The debt service fund is projected to have $442,000 of fund balance at the beginning of the year. Most of that fund balance is we have to fund our debt service payments by pre-funding a bank account for those debt service payments. And that sits in there, and even though it's cash money that's there, it's not truly available to us. So that money is just like a pre-funding of some of those debt service payments that we have. Revenues that we have, there's a transfer of $3.9 million coming in. We always budget an extra 500,000 for miscellaneous stuff, so we don't get caught with some weird little thing that nips us in terms of budget.
500, not 500,000.
Yeah, 500. Did I say 500,000? Oh, my God. I don't do hundreds when I budget. So anyhow, and then police and public vehicles vehicles. We have 2.3 million in our vehicles that we currently have that will be turning in. That will get revenue back on those to help offset our payment that we're going to have our final payment on that. And you'll be able to see that money reflected right down here. $2.3 million just goes right into when we sell those vehicles back, it goes right to pay off the current lease that we have on those vehicles. Then there's the annual amount on the vehicles. So for police, it's 682,000, almost 683,000. For public works, the light duty vehicles is just under 88,000. The heavy duty vehicle financing is 275,000, 348. That will be our last payment on that particular lease. We will be done after that. This is for our plows and things that we have. That'll be our last payment on that. So moving forward to the next year, we won't have a need for that particular one, but we do need to address what we're going to do with plow vehicles going into the future. So just a note on that, keep that in mind. Our building bond, our 2021 refunding building bond, we owe just over $1 million that we'll have for debt service payments on that. For the public works building, we have 521,000 in debt service payments for that. The general obligation bond, again, $1,311,000, and then $500 for get the right number out, so that we don't accidentally go over in our budget there. And so no change to fund balance there as you go through that. So again, I just want to emphasize this tentative budget. We do have to adopt at our business meeting today. It's required by state law that we do that. It does not mean that we're automatically going to do everything that's in this budget. This is a template going forward that we can modify. It does include a tax increase of $3,500,000. And this budget can be altered between now and the date that the budget is adopted, which is required to be adopted by June 22nd. And a note on that, we will be having actually our public hearing will kind of be spread over 2 weeks. We'll have a public hearing on the 2nd of June, as well as probably carrying that over to the 16th to be able to allow comment on the budget in total, but also the tax increase. In addition, we will have a truth and tax public hearing, which is planned for August 11th at 6 p.m. And because of doing the truth and taxation and having that out there, assuming that everything goes through this way, you actually can modify the budget all the way up to and including the night of
August
11th. However, please don't do it that night, it'll kill me. If you can give us any tip-offs of things that you want to do earlier, it helps us to be able to be prepared for that. It does take some time to make sure everything does tie out with everything as you go through that process, but we can do it up until that point in time. And so anyhow, that's kind of where it is. Again, noted, some of our neighboring cities are looking at implementing a transportation fee. This does not include a transportation fee, and we have no estimate of what might be able to be generated from that. This budget has summaries of summary fund balances as well as more detailed fund balances. Anything that's in yellow is kind of a projected. So mainly the beginning fund balance. So for the budget that we're looking at, and the ending fund balance for the year that we're just finishing, as well as and any under expends are notated in yellow so that you make sure to know that. But those are all included in here. If there are questions, I'm glad to answer whatever you might have in terms of the question.
There's something I haven't considered before. On the CDRA fund, we've got $750,000 in revenues and $750,000 in costs. With the Canyon Center project and then $550 for Hillside, $550. Is that a separate cost center with its own?
Yeah, so the 750 is in a different cost center, and we actually have been getting more like around 500,000 of net expenses. Just to avoid having to come in and do an adjustment. I just budgeted that 750, but if we don't get it in, we don't spend it. Cause we just take the money that comes in from the tax increment financing and we redistribute it through the formulas and then redistribute it right back out. It never varies from the money that comes in.
There's a fund balance there?
No. Cause we're budgeted 750 in, 750 out, but what really happens is we'll get, let's say, 500 in and 500 out. There's no change in the amounts. So the amount that is in here comes from this 750, or sorry, this 550 in operational revenue from the Hillside Plaza, and then this 550 of operational expenses. We've been not even, we've been getting in a little bit more revenue, the tune of around maybe $100,500 every year that we've been profiting on owning the Hillside Plaza at this point in time. We haven't been putting much in terms of capital maintenance, obviously, up there. So we've been just kind of operating it on a shoestring, until we finally get to what we ultimately do. We have been making a little bit of money on that.
Where do the profits go?
That's that 526,000 that's sitting in our fund balance.
So we could allocate that.
Yeah, it's not, well, not allocated, you can transfer it back potentially to the general fund. Because
Some of it.
it's not a TIF area or any other redevelopment areas, so it's proposed to potentially be in the future, but it isn't at this point in time. I wouldn't take it down to zero,
I wouldn't take it down to
But-
zero, but
yeah.
those could be found dollars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for Scott? Okay, thank you. Thank you for all that work.
Can you go over that all again? in the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
I'll get a drink.
Okay. All right.
Don't tell us what it is.
All right.
Who wants Scott's job?
Yeah.
Scott didn't even raise his hand.
No. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the public safety employee contribution rate adjustment. And we'll turn the time to our administrative services manager, Sienna Brummel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Brummel. So if you look at the staff report memo, it's the Public Safety Employee Contribution Rate Adjustment. That's the name of it. So the Utah Retirement System, or better known as URS, they have updated their requirement for the employee contribution for our Tier 2 public safety employees. It was 4.73%, and they have now raised that contribution to 5.98%. And currently, the city does cover that pickup, is what it's called, for our Tier 2 public safety employees. So what we propose is that the city does pick up that additional increase on the 5.98%. And what's nice is that this adjustment is not going to have any additional cost to the city. And why that is because at present, the city does contribute 3.81% to align our Tier 1 and our Tier 2 public safety employees. So if we were to do that pickup amount of 5.98%, that would then reduce that offset contribution down to 2.56%. So kind of in summary, it was 4.73%. The new proposed pickup is 5.98%. That would take that offset reduction from 3.81 down to 2.56. So it'd be a neutral net fiscal impact. So kind of the next steps on this is that the staff recommends discussing the proposed adjustment with internal leadership. With Jared's direction, he has confirmed. So now that is all back to you guys. And so I know that next it's city council approval if you guys would like to. We have to do this every year.
Great that it's a net zero impact for us.
Right. And it helps set us apart when it comes to, as you guys know, with police officers, it's kind of more of a hot job. And it's helped set us apart if we do pick up that amount.
Good.
And other cities, you know, there's been asking around of what other cities are doing, and right now, nothing's been voted on, so there's nothing really to say of what other cities are doing, but there's definitely lots of talk to see, you know, what other cities are doing.
Doesn't sound like there's a whole lot to talk about.
No, it's pretty basic. Any questions what you guys have for this? And again, this is just talking about our tier 2 public safety employees. So again, that would be our tier 2 police officers, so any police officers that were hired after July 1st of 2010. To help it be in layman's terms.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I have like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sienna has been putting in
Time.
so many hours on our benefits this year as we're trying to save money, but also give the best benefits we can to our employees. So she's done an amazing job.
Sorry, we just talking fast.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we're ready for our final staff report, which is the Mount View Park Splash Pad drought discussion, and we'll turn the time over to City Manager Gary Gerber.
Thank you, and Matt will correct me if I get anything wrong here, Matt Chad.
Both of us.
Matt always does, so it's fine. This is just in response to a couple of emails that we received from Salt Lake Public Utilities talking about severe drought conditions. I think they've implemented phase 2, is that correct
Phase
now?
2 implementation,
Their-
that's
Of their drought. plan.
their plan.
So Matt brought this to me and said, hey, what should we do with the splash pad? What should we consider? So we ran the numbers. We got the numbers from the bills here, and they're in front of you in the staff report. 2021, we actually closed it during COVID.
COVID, correct.
So I'm guessing the 52,000 gallons there was the park then. And
Yeah, park, well, it was, yes, park use.
yeah.
Correct.
But if you look at the last 2 years, we've used over 13 million gallons of water there each year and over $40,000 in charge. The biggest issue with the splash pad is its age, and then also the fact that it doesn't recirculate the water. So this is a one-time use facility for water. So we're recommending possibly either closing the splash pad for the season or maybe limiting it to certain days of the week, certain hours of the week, that it can be turned on. It's a huge amenity. We'll obviously get some complaints if we don't open it. I did talk with Lisa over at the rec center, and you know, that will affect possibly their pavilion reservations and things like that too, but that doesn't really impact us a lot. So just wanted to have this discussion, see what you all thought. We'll keep it open if you want, but in light of where we're at with the drought, we wanted to have the discussion.
Is it on a timer or do you have to actually send someone to turn it
Well,
on?
it gets turned on and off, yeah. I believe it is on a timer, but yeah.
Hours wise, right?
Yeah, hour wise, yes.
So if we chose to have it open, like say Saturday, Sunday, we could still limit the hours. on-
We can limit hours, we can limit days. Yes, correct.
I'm trying to think. I'm going back and forth in my head between shutting it or having Saturdays. And I mean, obviously, if you had it one day versus 7, that would be considerable. Sure, weekend use is probably the highest anyway. I know it's tricky. I know in Ketos, we've talked about the splash pad. And I know that we were originally told, or someone was told, maybe it was you, Matt, that whoever installed it, they're surprised that it's still even working.
It's past its life.
It's well past
It's past its lifetime, and there is going to be a point where that thing is done. And I doubt that we are going to replace it with a splash pad at this point. So, it's dying off. Do we part of me wants to say, maybe we can monitor, do just Saturday and Saturday only, and monitor and see what usage looks like. And if it's out of control, we just shut it down.
It would really be, I mean, honestly, it is up to y'all how you want to approach it. I will tell you from our, just anecdotally again, the calls we receive, if any city property has a sprinkler that is spraying on a sidewalk, I hear about it.
Yeah.
If anything that looks wasteful even when we're blowing the sprinkler lines out at the end of the year, I get calls about the wasting, so I'm not discouraging the use of it. It is a great amenity. Don't get me wrong. People love it. But if we're going to keep it, to me, and the reason I brought it forward was the optics of this whole thing. Is we are definitely in a drought in the state. We're feeling it. I mean, my own city where I am is $100 fine just for letting water hit your sidewalk right now. So it's a matter of how you want to approach it. We've used, like I said, I think we average about 13 million plus gallons each season, not the year, season.
So let me add one more thing just to think about, and I don't know the answer to this. There's right there next to Mount View, and I've mentioned this before, there's a lot of apartments, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of families. It is really one of the only amenities that you can have that has, and I totally understand in the future we may not do this, but has some sort of water feature that's free. You go to the rec center, it's not free. You go down to Crestwood, it's not free. It's been an amenity that clearly those families really enjoy, and they don't have many other choices, but also we don't have a great choice either. It's a drought. So
we can schedule if you, we can
What
have
do y'all
hours
think?
during the
What do
day.
y'all think?
We can have during the summer, we can say, we can do really anything. We can say between the hours of 11
2.
and 3, the splash pad will be on each day, which is the hottest part of the day. And things like that. You can say, if you want to say weekends, we'll run it all weekend. And I know the park gets a lot of use on Sunday. There's a lot of folks down there on
Did you do a very like a 4-hour window on Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, they can do whatever.
Honestly, I'm bringing it to you because of where we are right now. And yes, there is a huge optics on this that I think we need to be cognizant of, because when it does start, there is also there are a group of people out there on any water being used.
Yeah.
But there's also the same group on the opposite end, like you said. It's a great amenity. A lot of kids use it. A lot of families use it. It's a great feature. And I'm not discounting that. I'm just concerned about the amount of water there. We don't run the system, so I'm just trying to do our part.
In this system, like when we flush our toilets in the house, all that water can get into the system back to the lake, the majority of it. So is any of that water recaptured back into the system, or is it mostly just evaporated on the?
No, it goes into the draining system. It goes into the drainage. So
Okay.
yeah, what doesn't
So that-
evapotranspirate is in the sewer lines, which it gets treated as everything else and goes to the system.
Okay. And from your work with PTAS, is there discussion of improving that eventually to be a water feature that is recirculating, that has?
Yeah,
better-
at a minimum, there are recirculated systems. This is one of the things that I think we might have talked about as a group, but we're trying to do a master plan of Mount View because it needs it. There's a lot of aging stuff that's just, it's really old. And I think the city, even those at the beginning say that it was kind of just rushed and put together because they were trying to open a city. And also including an all abilities facility there as well, where they can engage with some sort of water element, which may not be a splash pad. Sometimes it's as simple as the park over in Holiday by 215 freeway. I'm forgetting the name. Knudsen Park has almost that little water pump where you can kind of just get your hands wet a little bit, and the usage is much, much smaller, but there's still that element. And I know we had some folks from other groups, kids with autism, others that like having those sensory experiences. So they wanted some element, but it is much, much, much less than what they have now. So
The recirculation, I'm gonna go off history. I built one in Highland, was one of the first ones got built in this neck of the woods. And at the time, that was about 15 years ago, and that was a recirc system, and that was just the system alone was about $1.7 million. So in today's dollars, I'm sure it's much higher. I'm not discouraging,
Track.
but in light of where we are and we're talking about budget and capital projects, these are things you would have to definitely set aside money for and work towards that. So just keep that in mind. That is not a short-term thing that I can see y'all making.
Could I
Maybe
ask
I'm
you
wrong.
a question? When do we need to make this decision? Is it on now?
No, it's not. It comes
Okay.
on. I forget when it starts up. I think after Memorial Day.
That's coming.
Yeah,
So we
not
could
too far.
have another,
Yeah, and if we decide to do it, we do need to advertise very clearly.
It's not a huge cost in comparison to the overall budget if we wanted to keep running
If we
it.
did 2 days a week, I just did a quick math, it would be $11,600 in water based on the 2025 rates. I know rates are going up.
Yeah.
At ULCT, there was it was focused on water. And they did recommend that we try a positive approach to help the people preserve and that lead out as a city in conservation. But I'm with you with these families that are in the apartments who don't have any other maybe recreation that they can. I remember when I was with my young kids, I had $0 for other things. And so the parks were what we did. So my compassion is there to consider it Saturday and
Would
Sunday.
you like to look at afternoons, like a 3-4 hour block in the afternoons?
I'm okay.
And then
I
maybe.
take my kids out in the height
I'm
of the
okay with
day.
weekends personal,
Yeah.
which limits it even further.
Yeah.
But I
I'm-
think, look, listen, if we're in a drought, we really struggled with this. We apologize. We really felt like the best balance was to look for Saturdays and Sundays when most people have free time. We're limiting the window. It's the best that we could do. I think that's
I don't know what the
incredibly
hours would be.
reasonable.
It's like, I-
We
I
would just turn it on,
kids out
we
3
would
in
turn
the
it on for
afternoon.
park hours. It would be turned on for park hours.
To do
And
what?
I think we open the parks, I think, what are the hours?
Sunrise to sunset.
Sunrise, sunset. So it would just run. We could set the timer on Saturdays and Sundays. It won't come on till say 10 o'clock. And we can shut it off at say 7 in the
7.
evening. And
Or 9.
Saturday and Sunday. And if you're gonna do the weekends, I like Sunday, just because not everybody in the
Sure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
communities,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
an LDS faith, there's a lot of other
Yeah, no, that's fair.
people that use the parks on Sundays.
We could also put a sign out that advertises where all the other ones are.
Yeah. And here's some hours for these other parks. that are
They'll be
open.
pointing to us.
Hey, Sean, text him your address.
I don't have a sprinkler system.
But we can do the weekends. I would suggest Saturday and Sunday. If you're going to do the weekend, do both. And then put a limit on time.
And I have no,
We can do it for a little bit and see how.
I was gonna say, just if you can keep track of it after a month and see if it was reasonable.
Well, I think you're gonna find out if it's reasonable by your phone,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And we'll track the calls we get. We'll definitely track the calls we get.
Good.
And we'll let you know, we'll give you a report after about a month. And see what we have, but it won't turn on until Memorial Day. And then so I'm hearing, say, from 9 to 7, 10 to 7,
10 to 6.
10 to 6,
I would do
10 to.
mine.
It's
so hot in July.
7's kind of twisting my brain because it's an odd number.
The sun's, I mean, even
7:30,
9 to 8, or, I mean,
Yeah.
I would take my kids after dinner and just enjoy it. 8 to
8.
8, there you go.
So
Your brain's going.
you have some great, amazing park captains that I'd love to just share this with and socialize it. And I think they can start to communicate and let people know. And I think we talk about it now.
We'll start pushing it out on social media this week. When the park splash pad will open, and we'll put a blurb in about the drought. We'll talk about that. And we're trying to do what we can as a city to respect that, but at the same time, give that amenity to those. And we're gonna run it from these times, and we'll set the times.
Will you work with me on? getting
Yeah,
that out?
we'll get it all out, if that's where we wanna go. Now, I wanna go
Suzanne,
on
when you
record
saying
saying, I'm
9,
not
you're
ready
saying-
to shutting it down.
Are you saying 9 AM? Just like 9 to 6?
Basing on my grandkids kind of,
I
how
was
they
gonna go easy,
get up,
say
and-
8 to 8,
but yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we're kind of,
because the even numbers work for him.
Well,
remember how hot. it was
Nine's
in
also-
July?
no, I know,
It's
prime
possible to
numbers.
be out At 9 in the morning, I don't like my grandkids are kids out in the height of the afternoon because of the sunburn risk. But after, and dinner and after dinner, it's great. So I don't wanna limit it to just 4 or 5
We can
hours.
start it later in the afternoon and run it later to the evening. I mean, we can start it at say noon when people start rolling around. You can run it till 9 at night.
That's when that's when my grandkids take naps, is in the afternoon. So my grandkids would utilize it maybe 9 to 1 and then again after naps. So I don't know, every family has their schedules.
yeah.
I'm just trying to project like, when would I take my grandkids to the
So
splash pad?
are we good 8 to 8, 9 to 8?
Or an 8-hour window.
I'd like
Why?
an hour. It's also the cost to the city,
So.
By the hour, it's not that much. Okay. It's the days.
Look, let's just, maybe we'd be a little more lenient on the hours with, after a
Same
month,
day?
let's see what the usage is.
No.
And if it's just like,
10 to 8.
Yeah. Well,
I would say at
8 to
least 9 to 8, if not 8 to 8.
let's just go 8 to 8 for a 12-hour window would be my suggestion, and let's see where we're at.
And see where it takes us.
Okay.
Okay, 8 to 8, Saturday, Sunday, and we'll track calls, the front, we'll track calls, and I'm sure you'll get them, and we'll bring a report back on what we have.
thank you.
Okay,
all right,
I really appreciate Matt bringing this, and I know our city manager is in support of even just cutting it but I
wouldn't say
support.
that.
I appreciate the discussion we've had and the thoughtfulness, because this is a great amenity, so,
it's a wonderful amenity, and I
Yeah.
don't like to see it not being used.
right.
which it will be done soon. I mean, it is gonna happen.
It's-
Where it's gonna end up.
That was my other question. So when we save money by not using this water, can we set that aside for the parks? And for that park in particular in the future?
That's
So you can't, because it's an operational budget, it doesn't carry over year. We can always say, that we want to carry funds over for a certain reason. And typically we'll do that through a transfer to a capital projects fund, because that's where we can have the ability to accumulate funds and rebudget it year after year and that kind of stuff.
Would you say, is that the savings at the end of the fiscal year? You can take that, say for instance, the Salt Lake Public Water money. Can that we budgeted, what's saved, can that be, is that what you're saying or not?
No, not that. We'd have to make a conscious decision to do it. It wouldn't just be, save money in an operational budget and put it over, but we could put, a certain amount of money over, each year. Kind of like we are doing with the Canyon Center Park that's up there. We've been putting about 150,000 a year from the TIF into the fund, and now we have, I don't know, 700-ish thousand or something like that accumulated so that we can, do whatever it is that we need there. We can do something along those lines with, a variety of different.
Mayor, I think that's a good question, because at a minimum, when the splash pad does end up breaking and it's no longer fixable, I don't think we would love just to have a bunch of metal sticking there that's not useful, which then, we'll be coming back to this table and saying, hey, we need to remove this, we need to whatever, and there's going to be some sort of cost to that. If we can plan ahead and we know that there's something that's going to fail, I don't know what that would cost, Matt. I don't know what we would put in its place, but.
That's what I was thinking, it'd be a reclamation, if we could have a reclamation budget for that splash pad, knowing that it's nearing its end of life.
Yeah, and we do have 300-ish thousand, I can't remember the amount now, 313 or whatever.
That'll
In
be
the
better than
capital
half,
projects
though.
fund that we can potentially use, for these things that pop up, mid-year that are in essence unexpected.
And one of the things,
Grants, y'all, like.
no, absolutely. And there might even be some water conservation grants.
There
that-
are some.
Because
that
we
are-
have a splash pad that is consuming water, maybe that could actually help transition us to something that's new and doesn't use water, that we should look into that. But the other thing is, I know. I sent Matt a picture of, no, not today. You responded, don't worry.
Oh.
It was, a resident sent a picture of the playground, and there was a metal piece that was coming off and a bolt that was missing, and so it's aging. We need to be clear of that.
So can I put an exclamation point on this with the budget? And one of the things that came out of this budget committee was, we really need a 5-year projection. And as you've gone through all of this, I realize that's because there will be one-time expenses, we're retiring debt, we have new capital acquisitions. and maintenance needs that that will fluctuate, that as a council member, I would like to be able to see. I know 5-year budget projections are a little tricky beyond maybe the first 18 months because so many things can change. But I would like to make a commitment that we will look at a 5-year budget, we'll look at long-term policies as was recommended by the Citizen Budget Committee so that we don't end up with these big, huge jumps all at once.
And now I'd like to turn the time back to Scott because he'd like to talk a little bit more about these policies.
Oh,
Yeah.
Perfect time.
An hour.
All right, well, I was a plant, wasn't I? I was a plant to
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. We
So-
flow so well.
Yeah, so this is, I'm gonna make this a little bigger. This is the policy section, budget policy section from our budget book, and it's remained the same for a number of years, more or less. Might have been some minor tweaks to it. But we have operational budget policies, we have capital project budget policies, debt management policies, revenue estimation policies, fund balance policies, so on and so forth. However, I'll say some of the policies are better than others. For instance, the fund balance policy says that we need to remain a balance of 6% of general fund expenditures. Well, if we get to 6%, we won't have enough money to be, have working cash on hand and different things like that. So we need to expand this policy and give it more framework and more outline of what it is that we want to do, maybe give a range of where our target is and put where we are, and stuff and how we're going to get there. We've got debt management policies and they're very vague. We want to keep it somewhat vague because we don't want to totally tie the hands of council to be able to do things. But I think having some framework of what we want to do in there, like came up in the Citizen Budget Committee and has been talked about by each of you at various times and incorporated in there. I didn't have time to go and totally update this, but I have started it and I plan to bring something in that we can adopt as, whether we want to call them budget policies or finance policies or whatever, as part of our budget adoption. It would be a separate thing that we would adopt, but do that in June at either the 2nd or the 16th meeting in June so that we can have that adopted as part of this. And some of that will be, our long-term, I can't remember where it is. Whoops. But anyhow, here we go, long-term, physical assets, different things that we want to, account for, getting better. Right now, I basically take the current budget and say, if this were to continue to occur for 5 years, this is what would happen. But I don't do a lot of other things than that, other than if I know debt service is either retiring or changing or any of those kinds of things, I incorporate those in, but I don't anticipate other things until basically you all tell me, this is what we want to do. And that's where we could use more dialogue to figure out what is it that we want to do. We can take in and out, the technical things, and we can talk more about in concept of what it is that we want to do in the future. So we have a bit of a roadmap in front of us.
On that 5-year strategic plan will outline what your priorities are, and they can shift and change as we, and it's a living document, but that'll help us also plan budgetarily. What is the upfront cost? What's the ongoing cost? What's it gonna take to get to that point?
So I think you all already know, or maybe I only said this to the budget committee, that I read the policies of 6 cities that are around us, pretty similar in size and budget. And I could even criticize our own here is that it's a lot of fluff and stuff and compliance. And I would rather see that we have those policies in place. I would like to look strongly towards holidays planning because they have a debt policy right there. Debt service as a percent of general expenditures of the general fund would not exceed 15%. But then it says, what parameters would occur that you might have to exceed that. So I would like to see some more guidelines, guardrails, especially for me as a new city council member. I didn't really understand municipal budgeting versus, just a private organization's budgeting. So I'd like to lay that path out for future electeds so that we can maintain the fiscal health of our city over time.
Thank you for working on that, Scott. That'll be very helpful to have that updated and brought to us. Thank you. Okay, now we're ready in our meeting for the review of calendars and upcoming events. tomorrow on May sixth, that Wednesday at Oakville Elementary from 5:30 to 7 PM. We have Creek Road Crosswalk Study Open House.
Yes.
Anything you want to say?
This is, if you'll recall, this is part of our agreement with Sandy City. Sandy's actually in charge of running this program. We are a part of it through an agreement, memorandum agreement. And this is looking at studying pedestrian, activities along there, as well as some traffic, and trying to find out the best locations for crosswalks on Creek Road, which we get quite a few calls on, both us and Sandy. And since the county is back, since the county is, annexed Creek Road back to, or annexed it to Sandy, now we're only dealing with two entities as opposed to trying to get three of us to work together. So, sorry.
No. Since it's at Oakdale, I'm obviously thinking west of Highland Drive and that part of Creek, or is this Creek?
This is Creek all the way.
The whole span.
From Union Park all the way to Silver.
To 3,500.
So if you have the ability to blast that out, I sent it to 140 women in my neighborhood group.
Yeah, and the
Was this
there's a group of
last-
moms.
the school district is taking their area and putting that out on their blast as it is, and we've been
There's a
advertising.
group me down there, a bunch of moms.
Sandy sent it out to a bunch of people, so.
Okay.
So there's been a
Started to
lot
reach
of,
out to me, and she's like, do you know anything about this? I'm like, yes.
there's been a lot of reach out on this, so it's a lot, we anticipate we'll get quite a bit of input.
And talk to me about the event. Is it an hour and a half of kind of you come as you want,
Yeah.
give your feedback, nothing set?
No, the way it's set up, there'll be, it's similar to a lot of these transportation ones. You can go in, there'll be staff there to discuss, there'll be boards up, and you'll be able to
Okay.
make notes, give your thoughts. We're still gathering data, but we're also, there will be another one of these happening once we've gotten to a, but we're still gathering data. And then residents can say, this is where we use it a lot, or that, have you looked at, things like that. It's an open house walkthrough.
Do you know if there will be snacks? That's for me.
Oh.
There,
Animal crackers.
Okay,
and
I'm in.
water.
I'm in.
crunch donuts.
Crunch.
Dehydrated water.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have the Public Works Open House for residents, which
Won't be
is,
snacks.
well, yeah,
Hot dogs at that one.
oh, that's
I'm gonna
Wednesday.
come with different masks on, but just keep eating.
Okay, that's Wednesday, May 20th from 5 to 7, your dinner time, at the Public Works Building. Then we have a shred event Monday, June 1st from 9 AM to 12 PM at Hillside Plaza, and that is open to Cottonwood Heights residents only. And a request for 2 boxes per vehicle limit. And then we have a Charm Hard to Recycle event, Saturday, June 6th. 2026, 9 AM to 12 PM at Hillside Plaza. And we have Butlerville Days, July 16th to July 18th, 2026. Checking, and that is.
Can I ask you a quick question? What is the purpose behind the shred event? And how much does it cost us? Cause I was thinking like, it's not sustainability, cause that would be recycling. Is it just like data protection? Or-
Service.
It's the city service. We've always, it's been one of those longest all.
Curbside bulk waste.
Working on that. Actually,
Really?
I do need to talk to you all during
Really?
dinner.
Okay, that's not an agenda, but please put it on an
Your
agenda.
Okay,
Mayor, may I, this is not on there, but you all remember that we've advertised if you want to come to the elementary school. It's not advertised as public, but it's advertised for y'all, so.
and that's what day?
We publicly noticed it that we could be.
Yeah, so that you could all be there if you wanted to, and that was on the 19th. So from 9 to about 1 o'clock.
19.
From 9 to 1. If you just want, just purely for the entertainment value, you can just sit back and watch.
Yes,
Pretty fun.
Yeah,
yes.
I have it on my count.
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind everybody, if you would like, that is an entertaining time. So, yeah.
Is it one school this
80
year?
Yes, one school, 80 fifth graders running around.
But again, that's not open to the public. because-
No, it is not open to the
Everybody-
public.
Yeah.
I know it has been on the calendar because of that, but we're coming and I won't see you again till then, so I just wanted to give you a quick reminder. It's not a public meeting, but publicly noticed so you can all be together.
And we have a senior social that day too.
Yes.
Busy day.
Good, fun, great.
I'll be at that.
Okay.
Matt's the only one who doesn't qualify.
Different categories.
Okay, are we ready to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. So this meeting is adjourned and we'll meet again at 7.